I'm Mike Peat from Unicorn InterGlobal in the UK, and I'm going to be talking today about DataFlex for WordPress, or DF for WP. So, WordPress was originally an open source blogging tool, but it has become one of the most widely deployed pieces of software on the web and the most widely deployed content management system. Of all the sites on the web, around 45% use some form of content management system. And of those, 60% use WordPress. Now that comes to roughly 75 million sites. That's quite a lot. By comparison, the next two most popular content management systems, Joomla and Drupal, are in the 2% area as opposed to the 25% that WordPress enjoys. WordPress has over 44,000 plugins for it to enable it to do different things. So it can be customized for all sorts of uses, e-commerce, image galleries, almost anything you can think of. Between those two things, they make WordPress effectively a platform in its own right, like an operating system almost. And that is a platform we can now deliver applications for using the DF for WP plugin. So we get DataFlex once again everywhere. Oop, skipped one. The DF for WP plugin allows you to integrate your applications directly, your web applications directly into WordPress. They must be 18.2 or higher. And existing vertical or horizontal apps can be quickly modified for full integration without compromising their existing functionality. So you make some changes to the app, but it will still run as it always ran outside of WordPress, but these changes will allow it to, minor changes will allow it to run more comfortably within WordPress. And new applications can obviously be written to order. DF for WP has two parts to it. The actual WordPress plugin, which is made up of a small set of PHP, JavaScript, and CSS files, and a DataFlex library workspace containing classes modified to help the app work better under WordPress. The plugin itself is delivered as a zip file containing all that's required on the WordPress side, DataFlex for WordPress.zip. WordPress expects plugins to be in zip format, so you should not extract those files, but upload the zip as is to the target WordPress site. Now, when you download it, there's one zip with two other zips inside it. One is the library zip for DataFlex, the other is the plugin zip that goes into WordPress. You'll need to extract and unzip the library workspace for your own use, but for going to WordPress, you don't unzip that file, you just upload it as a zip because that's what WordPress expects. To install a plugin, you have to be logged in as administrator, or super admin if you happen to know what that is. And on the administrator dashboard, on the left-hand menu, you go to Plugins, Add New, Upload Plugin, choose a file, and select the DataFlex for WordPress zip file. Once you've installed it, you click Install Now, and on the resulting page, you click Activate Plugin. You can come back and activate it anytime, in fact, once it's installed. And you should then see a DataFlex entry on the menu there. So let's do that. Now I've been really brave and completely deleted my DataFlex for Web App plugin, so we can go to this site. This is www.dataflexwordpress.com. I'll just go to the home page. There we go. And this explains all about the plugin and has a bunch of samples that you can see working on it. So I'm going to dive straight in and say start using the DF for W plugin. I could try the samples, but I'm going to go to installing it, and I'm going to download the zip file, and I'm going to save that. Open it up, and I'm going to unzip to local drive Synergy 2017. Unzip. There we go. So there is the DataFlex for WordPress plugin. That's what's going to go up into DataFlex, and there's also this library workspace which contains the classes that you need to make your application more friendly to WordPress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my WordPress site, and I'm going to have to log in. This is an example of what a WordPress site looks like, but frankly, they can look like absolutely anything at all. I'm using the, I think the 2016 theme. A 2017 theme is now available, and there are many, 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 many more, but this is just one. So if I remember who I am, yay, that's me. And with luck, I've remembered my password. Yes, and now I'm into this screen. So I can go to Plugins and Add New and Upload Plugin and browse for that file, which happens to be what I did yesterday, so it looks at the right place first time. And then I upload that file. Okay, install now. Activate the plugin, and down here we have now got a little DataFlex thingy. Okay, not really hard. So hovering over that DataFlex entry on the left menu there will show two sub-items, Dashboard and Help. The dashboard is where the configuration entries are made. There aren't very many. There's a path to the default DataFlex web app. This makes the assumption that you've only got one web app that you want to embed in the site, and it just says, well, configure it here and you don't have to worry about it. A default DataFlex theme to preload. This doesn't actually set the theme in the application. You have to do that in the application itself, but this speeds up loading by preloading the theme before you load the application and stops things like flickering happening. And then there's a secret, which is a 32-character key for encrypting the data passed between WordPress and the web app. And that last one is important. That's required. You will need to copy that secret and set a property in your web app for your web app to be able to access the WordPress features. It'll still work without it, and I'll show you that happening in a moment. But if you want to fully integrate it, you want to copy that secret. You click the Save Changes, and the plugin's properties are ready to go. So let's just have a look at that. Here's our DataFlex. We've got Help. What does it say in the Help? The same sort of stuff as I've just been telling you, plus a bit more. And the dashboard, these are the things. So I already had this set up yesterday. So web order 19, flat desktop, and there is the 32-character key. I'll say Save Changes, and we're ready to go. So to embed a web app or a view from a web app, something you'll only be able to do if you do the customization of your application, you go to create a new WordPress page by going to that dashboard, Pages, Add New, give it a title, enter a shortcode. Now this shortcode thingy is important. It starts with a square bracket, then DF for WP-web app, closing square bracket. That's not all there is to it, but at the moment that's all we need. You can then add settings to that shortcode later, and you click the Publish button and then the View Page link, and you should see your web app. There are additional shortcode settings we can make. View, which you can set to the object name within the DataFlex. So I was going to set it to the customer view, which I'll probably do in a minute. We set it to "Oh customer" in quotes. Height in pixels that the web app's going to take up on the within the WordPress page. You can dynamically set the app path. So we set the default web application on the configuration screen, but in the shortcode we can set that to something else so that it can pick up a web app from somewhere else in our computer, or indeed anywhere else, as we'll see eventually. We can also dynamically set the theme to preload. There is a params setting which allows you to have a set of pipe separated property equals value pairs, So properties of the web app can be set dynamically as you go in. And that may allow you to customize the look and feel of your application when it is displayed in a WordPress site or on this WordPress page. And if you need the DataFlex reports preview or web components loaded, you can set DFR to true, or in fact, anything except 0 or false will work. So those params settings, which allow you to set the web properties of an embedded object, either the app, usually the app, or the view, and the pipe-separated list, as I said. And 2 new web properties have been added for views. If you're just embedding a view rather than a whole application, a view now has a PS theme property and a PB show toolbars property if you use the subclasses within the library. Because frequently, if you want to show a view, you don't want to show the toolbars because you're not going to let them navigate to anywhere else because you're just showing them one view. So let's have a look at that and see how that works. So I go to Pages, and I'll add new. Hello? And we'll call it Atlanta. No, just one. Now, I haven't told it what web app. It's going to do the one I defaulted it to, which is Web Order 19. So I'll now say Publish. And View Page. My application, of course, is timed out. And I have to log into this one. And there we have our web app. Now, this worked better when I had a bigger screen. But we can see that the web app has functionality. But we also notice we've got a scroll bar down the side here. We've got a scroll bar at the bottom because I'm being compressed into a different screen space, which is really quite tight. I will ignore the scroll bar at the bottom. There's nothing I can do about that. But the vertical scroll bar we can do something about. So we go back and edit the page, and we'll add some properties to the web app. We'll say height equals 650, let's try. Sometimes just have to fiddle with this a little bit. Did I click that button? No, I didn't. There we go. View page. And now the vertical scroll bar has gone away because we have enough space on the page for the entire web app. Now, can anybody notice some things that aren't quite right about this? They don't look quite right. We've got an underline under every menu option, and also under those menu options that come with words like clear, add, clear all, save, and delete. What's happening here, this is not basically how Web Order 19 works. This is a conflict between 2 sets of style sheets. Our style sheets in the web app and the style that I'm using, the style sheets for the theme that I'm using in WordPress. So originally we solved this by changing the web app, but that's not so good. Changing the style sheets in the web app, that would mean your application might look different when you run it outside of WordPress. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the dashboard. I'm going to go to Appearance and an editor. And by default, it will come up with the style sheet for the 2016 theme that I'm using. I'm not using the wrong scroll bar there. I should be using this one. In fact, I'll just go straight to the end. So there's the end of the style sheet, and I'm just going to add something to improve that. And it turns out that those underlines are being created by this box shadow. Wrong way. Alt-Tab. That's what I wanted. So I'll just paste that in. Update file. And I'll go back to the page. Where's Atlanta? There it is. Phew. I'm going to have to do a hard refresh here, I think. And now they've gone away. Okay? So this is the way you would go about solving the problems. You add a little bit to the theme, not to your application. The other thing you may notice is these buttons aren't quite centered. It turns out that we think they should be 28 pixels as a radius, but WordPress wants to make them 30 as far as the icons are concerned. So we can fix that again. We can go into the dashboard, go down to appearance and the editor again, and down the bottom here, just go to the end. There's the one we added before. And this little tweak should update file, pages, Atlanta. It's really good. This is Atlanta. It's at the beginning of the alphabet, so it comes up at the top of my list of pages. It's easy to find again. And once again, I'll need to do a hard reload to force it to reload the style sheet. And there you can see the icons are now centered within the circles. This all looks a lot better if I have more screen space, but sadly the projector isn't supporting that. And our, how would I do that, Stuart? I don't have a scroll wheel. Oh yeah, that might work. Okay, that would work. Okay, yes, that's better. That's about, is that right? Yeah, that's okay. Well done, thank you for that. So yes, here's our views, customer maintenance, whatever, salespersons, and stuff like that. Now this application is still not really integrated with WordPress because it hasn't got the secret embedded in it. This is just a sample straight from the box. So we can use a different one and change that, go to edit page, and I can tell it, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I've done the embedding demo. Okay, yes. I'll wait for that for a moment. If we use a DF for WP library workspace, several classes we can then change. We have to change the class of the web app to make it a CWP web app. We change each of the views to be a CWP web view. We change modal dialogues to be CWP web mobile dialogues. And images and column images are treated the same way. So we have to make the appropriate use statements, use CWP web app and so on in the appropriate files. But that's all you have to change. And your app is then ready to integrate. Shouldn't change the behavior of your application outside WordPress. It should behave exactly the same. So you can maintain a single code base for things that are going to be embedded or things that are going to stand on their own. There's a new web app property, PB WP login. If you want to not use DataFlex's login mechanism, but instead use WordPress's login mechanism, you can set that to true, and that will allow when they try to go to the page that has this on it, it'll say, oh, you have to be logged in to use this, and it'll send them to the WordPress login rather than have a DataFlex login. It's developer choice. Should a user have to log in at all? Typically, WordPress users don't log into WordPress sites unless they're administrators or authors, but maybe you want them to log into the application. It's just your choice, really. So that 32-character secret that was created in the plugin configuration needs to be known to the application. And in the web app, we set PSWP encrypt secret to that value. Now, you could either do that directly in the source code, or maybe you could store it in a database field, or perhaps an ini file, which is not very sensible, I don't think. If you put it in the source code, then once it's compiled, that's relatively secure, but anybody who gets your source code knows what it is. one way or another, it's got to be there somehow. There's also a new Boolean function of the web app in WordPress, so you can check to see if the application's running under WordPress and maybe take different action in certain circumstances if it is. To support this, there's also a new function of the web app, getWpInfo. You pass it the string name of the data you want to get, and it will return the value. That data is passed into the web app with AES 256 encryption and also an MD5 hash, which we check that it hasn't been fiddled with in some way. You can, even with encryption, you can bit twiddle to hope to hit something lucky. So these are the various bits of data that are passed from WordPress into the program, and you would send these as quoted strings to that getWpInfo function. Time sent, you're not really interested in that, but it's one of the cunning ways we make every single piece of data unique, because it's got the time down to microseconds, I think, since the beginning of 1970. So it's a really long number, and it's different every time. Is the WordPress user logged in? A Boolean. The parameters list that we set or might have set in the plugin, which view to use if we're just wanting to embed a view rather than the whole app, the WordPress site address, the user ID, user's display name, his email, login, level, assuming he has filled in all that data. Obviously, that's only available if the user's logged in. And similarly, first name, last name, login, URL, and that's the WordPress login URL and the WordPress home URL, which facilitates logging in using the WordPress login rather than logging in using DataFlex. So to access those values, we can just code this, get WP-info of GHO web app, and then the quoted string of the property that we want to do. How am I doing for time? I'm okay. I've got a few minutes. If you're understanding of WordPress's functionality and not afraid of a little PHP code, you can add to that past data. We can use the editor that we saw earlier on the plugins and select the DataFlex for WordPress plugin, the df4wp page.php file, and then scroll down to around character 60 where you'll find this stuff. Oops. And we could add something like get the theme by name, get the theme name, get the theme version. And if it were a different theme, we might want to take different action. But I don't supply that, that's not supplied automatically. You'd have to change it slightly to get that. Now, the app path setting should start with a slash, but if it doesn't, one will be assumed. And that path will be to a virtual directory on the WordPress server. However, if your web application is on a different server, which it would need to be if WordPress was running under Unix or Linux, which they very frequently are, you would have to have 2 slashes at the front, and then the DNS name or IP address of the server and the path to the web app. That involves using something called CrossOrigin resource sharing. If you do that, we have a white paper on that on our website, but also it's published as a data access blog. So if you go and look at the blogs on the data access website and search for CORS, CrossOrigin resource sharing, you should find that. Now the first thing, well actually let's go back and do a little bit more with the app. So I'm going to change the app path to app path equals, now I'm just going to make sure of the local URL, web order test 19.0. Now this has been compiled with the web app classes and with our secret key in the appropriate property. View the page, and now we get an entirely different, although startlingly similar, just different color, web application. We could also choose, oops, wrong way, we could also go back in and say, I want to just have a view. Update the page and view it. And now we only get the customer maintenance view. Now, it may be or may not be. We've lost the menu, so they can't navigate that way. But we may or may not want to give them the toolbar, so we can go back in at the page and say, in params, and this is a quoted list. I'm just going to have one thing, PB show troll bars. Show, what would I do without you guys? Toolbars. I may not have spelled it correctly anyway, but we'll see. Yeah, okay, the toolbar's gone. So you can turn that on and off as you require. We can also set the theme dynamically as well. I'm not going to bother doing that. So if we need to do something from a different website, we need to use CrossOrigin resource sharing, which is quite a complex mechanism. The first thing you need to know, and the thing that everybody gets wrong when they first try it, is this is not done on the WordPress machine, it's done on the web app machine. So you need to configure it in IIS, and you have to configure it to respond to what's called a pre-flight options request, as opposed to get a post. You don't have to worry about that. The browser does that, but you have to configure it so that it gives the right responses. And those responses are conditioned by a set of access control allow HTTP headers that will permit access. So you have to go into IIS Manager, and in the features view for your web app virtual directory, you use the HTTP response headers option to add 4 new headers. Access control allow origin, which you set to the host name that you're going to embed the application in. Access control allow methods, get, post. Access control allow headers, set to content type, and access control allow credentials, which you set to true. This is so that the DataFlex cookie is allowed to be passed, and we need that because it controls the sessions. You may want to rearrange the handler mappings, list of the orders. In handler mappings, you go to view ordered list link and select the options verb handler, which may well be near the bottom, and move it up to the top. It may not be necessary. It's not been necessary when I've tried it, but it is recommended that you do that. It'll ask you, do you really want to reorder the list? And you say, yep. And you should then be able to embed your web app in WordPress on the target machine. It's a bit trickier if you want to embed a web app in multiple different machines, because we can't use a wildcard asterisk in allow origins, because that's incompatible with allow credentials. So we have to be a bit cleverer, but it can be done, and the blog article explains how to do that. So let's just see that in action. I'm going to go back to my edit page. I'll get rid of all this stuff because this stuff won't work for what I'm about to do. And here I'm going to make my app path point to something completely different. I think it's web order, or is it just orders? Well, we'll see. If I get it wrong, it won't work. And there we have it. This web app is being loaded from Data Access's DataFlex for WordPress website.